is up, bold women? Welcome to the Bold Women Podcast. My name is Maria Weiler, and I am here with, you are not going to believe it, I have two of my dear friends here today.
Whoa.
Yep, the first one and my co-host, the one and only Maryl Wilson.
That's me.
That's her.
Turns out.
And we have a guest.
But before
that.
Hey, yo, we're on socials. I don't know how many times I gotta say this. I guess every episode.
Probably.
As it turns out, we're on just about every important platform there is to know about, like Spotify, where you can ask us questions, respond to our polls. You can share the link to your stories.
And tell your friends.
Tell your friends about us. Tell them about it. And then YouTube, Apple Podcasts.
Okay,
not to be confused with a former episode where, what did she call it?
Formerly known as iTunes. Listen here to all the faces in this room that are being made. Tell me you didn't. Right there on the screen says iTunes. So don't come for me. You all know what I was talking about.
Anyway, we're on social media. Come see us over on Instagram. That's my favorite one to use. I think we're still on TikTok. We are, but I haven't posted to it in ages because, frankly, my friends, I don't like TikTok. So
there she said it.
Yep, said it.
You know what I was watching on TikTok today?
What?
I hate to admit this, but I was watching pimple popping.
Oh.
Sorry.
We are moving on.
All right. Onward. We have a guest
I was
today.
watching Maryl on TikTok today.
Byron.
Whoa.
I was on Byron's podcast a while back. You guys covered cults. When you talked about Charles Manson, the Manson family.
Sheesh.
Yeah, good convo. So check out the podcast. Let's get to the bottom of that.
The Manson family.
I had no idea you were on that one.
And bring your tinfoil hats. Yes. Yes, I was.
Well, and some of you may have noticed there are two male voices.
Yep.
That you just heard on the mic. Our one and only Byron popped in.
Of course.
But,
Hello.
But we have a special guest today. Ladies and gentlemen, we would like to welcome Jacob. Welcome back. It's been a minute, but Jacob Russell.
Jacob?
Yes.
Jacob Russell.
Freaking Russell.
Thank y'all.
Let's go.
I ruined the intro because I cannot be quiet that long.
No, it's okay. That's how I am.
Well, Byron didn't even bother putting a fake applause in there, but
No.
It's okay. I'll allow
We
it.
want to read.
Guess.
I have a
Ladies and
soundtrack in my
gentlemen.
head.
As he flips
Jacob Russell. Yeah, there we go.
Now we can start.
The enthusiastic cheers and horn solos. I don't even know what to call that.
You did a vuvuzela.
Oh,
Is it that?
That was.
Do you remember that?
That was from
Vuvuzelas?
South Africa when was it 2008, the World Cup in South Africa?
They better not come to Kansas City when the world.
Shakira did it's time for Africa. Na, na, na,
Oh, gosh.
Hey, waka, waka,
Completely off
hey.
subject, but I am ridiculously excited about the World Cup coming here.
I am too.
Yeah.
I am too. It's going to be
I don't even
awesome.
know what to say. Even though we don't even get any of okay, I won't say they're not cool games, but they're not.
The draw.
They're not like the
finals.
Yeah, we didn't get a good draw.
We didn't get the big games.
No.
But hey, we get to say
We got
that
some.
a little Midwestern city
It's part of the big World
was part
Cup.
of the World Cup, so that's a pretty big deal.
Okay, this is not to be like toot horn, but this was a really cool.
Toot toot.
This was a really cool World Cup experience. So I believe it would have been 2004 or 5. I don't remember when it was, but I was actually in Tanzania when the World Cup was going on.
Ooh.
Oh, what?
And so there, we would be in certain spots, and you could hear games.
You could just
No, but I was just but you could hear games being played from generators and huts, and
that's
people would be
awesome.
surrounded. And so it was just this really cool way to see sporting games. Just the whole village would gather together to watch it, and one of them sporting games. One of them too. We were in was it a World Vision? It was a refugee camp, and everyone in the camp was there watching. So it was just this really cool, cool way to watch it.
One of the oldest sports.
Yeah.
Well, okay, in Western Europe.
Yeah.
Depends who's writing the history.
Yeah.
Dun, dun,
yeah. I mean, there's other things, but anywho.
Today, guys,
I'm excited. So we just need to get to the topic.
We do, because today's topic is something Maryl and I have discussed this multiple times just on the side.
In our singleness.
Especially. But I have a question. Where are the men?
Yeah, we have pondered that question for some time.
Through and through, years and years.
And by where are the men, I think that if you are listening to this podcast and you are a single lady, you know exactly where we're going with this. Like, where are the men in church? Mm-hmm. Where are they?
So, according to a study from Hartford Seminary.
Hartford. Oh, geez Louise.
I'm trying to.
Starting out strong.
I was trying not to say Harvard.
I'm not going to say a word.
Hartford.
Don't worry, I'll do it all.
Yeah, she corrects me.
I don't have to.
I'll send all the zingers out.
Yeah, she doesn't hold any zing back. But according to this study,
the Hartford Seminary.
Yeah, yes. The typical U.S. church congregation draws an adult crowd that's 61% female and 39% male. This is a gender gap that shows up in all age categories. So it's not even that it's young to old, it's on in there. So on any given Sunday, there are 13 million more adult women than men in America's churches.
Wow.
Almost 25% of married church-going women will be at church alone.
That is sad also.
Midweek activities draw 70 to 80% female participants, and a majority of church employees are women except for ordained clergy, who are overwhelmingly male.
Okay, checks out.
This is where we have some more stats here. Mm-hmm. So over 70% of boys being raised in church will abandon it during their teens and 20s, many of which will never return. And as of June 2022, 36% of women say they went to church in the last week. 24% of men say they did. So that's a big difference there. And then churches overseas report gender gaps of up to 9 women for every adult man in attendance.
That is wild.
So 9 to 1. Christian universities in the U.S. enroll almost 2 women for every 1 man. And then fewer than 10% of U.S. churches are able to establish or maintain a vibrant men's ministry.
Okay, Christian universities enroll 2 to 1 women because they think, I'm going to go to college and meet my husband.
Meet my man.
So they're like, where are they going and where's a good one going to be? Right. Oh, a pastor.
Better go to a Christian university. I went to Bible school and I did.
You really signing up for that life?
What they call it in Bible school?
Like, is that what?
An MRS degree.
I didn't go anywhere near that. So, well, I think I went to a school that advertised.
That's what mine was.
It was false advertisement.
It said it was like based on Christian principles. And I was like, there is nothing Christian about this school.
Yeah.
That's how mine was
funny
too.
It's funny you say that because, well, also ironically, because the last time that you were on here, we had another guest, Josh Young, if you remember, buddy? From Bridging the Gap, part 1 and 2. But he had said like he went to Drake University because they were saying that they were a Christian university. Yeah. And then he got there and was like,
Yeah, Josh was super humble during that. I know that's a whole other episode, but like his decision in that, and we've been friends for a long time. One of the most athletic people I've ever met. Like he could have gone anywhere. Mm-hmm. It's not just saying
he had a lot
that,
of opportunity,
right? Like, and he prayed over it with his family and like made that decision.
What do I do?
Yeah. So, I mean, kind of off topic, but
well, hey, though,
Josh,
if he didn't choose that school, we would have never met, and he would have
never been on that episode.
He never would have been on that episode.
And then it wouldn't have made this circle complete because the world is so small.
Small.
Meryl went to college with one of my great friends growing up from Lawton, Oklahoma.
Yeah, of all things,
of all places and things.
What are the odds?
And
very just bizarre. Crazy.
So I think, gosh, and this is just hard because it's one of those things that as time continues to pass, I don't think these stats are going anywhere until revival sweeps our nation. Like is basically a way to put it. I feel like it would take a move of God to bring men back into church. Can
I read this bit from an article I found on Capterra.com, which I think Capterra is just like WordPress or something.
Oh.
So I don't know that I even really found like
it's not our gotquestions.org.
No, it's not. And I, of course, left off the author's name because I'm smart like that from time to time. But anyway, they were
it's Wikipedia. Was that right?
Pretty. Oh, that's good. So this person had read a book by David Murrow called Why Men Hate Going to Church. And then basically was providing some commentary on it, basically a blog, but says the modern feminization of the church is driving men away, which is interesting. And he went on to argue that the church has, quote, wrapped the gospel in this man-repellent package, unquote, by presenting the church as a relational and nurturing congregation. He thinks the warm presentation of the church is alienating to more goal-driven and competitive men. And his point is that by becoming a place dominated by women, the church has come to place a positive emphasis on traits that are more stereotypically attributed to women, which is like the emotional expression of feelings, nurturing, physical touch, etc. And that makes some men uncomfortable. And some pastors agree with Murrow and believe that men need to face the epic struggle of following Jesus, a struggle that is often overshadowed by the affirming, safe, and inviting atmosphere fostered by many churches. And then he also points out that Murrow was saying, like, church is viewed as an all-girls club where they're not welcome or comfortable, where men are not welcome or comfortable. And I guess straight out the gate would like to kind of get everyone's thoughts on this, on that initial, thing. Like, in my initial thoughts, I'll just give them to you because I already wrote them down.
Go for it.
Was that this is like a marketing ploy by the church. And what I mean by that is that, like, statistically, women are consumers that drive the economy in the U.S. You get more women in the church, you get more money in the church.
Mm-hmm.
So, interesting.
I can see that.
What do you guys think about that?
No, I'll go ahead. You are a guest.
You're the guest.
You are a guest.
Get to it.
I want to know what you think more so than I want to know.
I mean, it's such a
deep.
it's such a deep topic and conversation.
Very needed conversation, though.
Surface level, I think men need to man up.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's part of it.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of us, myself included, have problems, sometimes with submission and authority, even asking for help, even saying anything, or even showing anything that might even reflect weakness.
Yeah.
Right. Like from my upbringing and where I'm from, that's the one thing you couldn't show, know, or no matter what you built, it was gone. Right. Like, and that's, I know men still feel some of that tension today. But I think it's a misconception, one, and two, I think it's an error on the church's part for the last couple hundred years on teaching what real men are.
Yeah.
And men's role, not only within, as a husband, as a father, as a leader in your home, as a leader in the community, as a leader in the church.
Mm-hmm.
I don't feel like men have been accurately given a gospel that drives them to be better men, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think what I just want to say really quick to that is I think I haven't actually considered this before, and I feel funny even saying it.
Don't say it.
The fact that you said that, like, submission to a man is a big struggle. And while on its surface, it's like, okay, I mean, I guess I get that, but I haven't considered it in the sense of, like, I don't know. It's as you were saying, it's like, you don't want to be viewed as weak, emotional, whatever. But I think something that is a problem too has been, like, how dismissive we as a church and just as a society in general have been of the idea that men actually do struggle with, like, submitting to Christ.
100%.
And so I think that that's really interesting because it's like, with women, I don't know, I feel like we can openly talk about that sort of thing. And, like, it's just not.
But culturally speaking, you've always kind of been allowed to.
Right.
Right. And
that
so,
was,
just to add a new wrinkle to it. Yeah.
Well, and that's kind of what I was going to say. Like, I think culturally speaking or like you were saying, like, there's, like, the surface level thing. But I think these deeper roots of our cultural side is men haven't had the place to, like, show weakness necessarily and still yet be considered strong.
Right.
And I think
yet we're all told to be like Paul.
Right. And, like, Paul's, if you read his stuff, dude's all over too.
I just want to see his scars, man. Like, the stories, like,
sheesh.
I guarantee you he's got a story for every one of them too.
Yeah.
Like,
well, and then it's
just
like, I think of Abraham. So there's, is it in 2 Peter? I can't remember the verse reference, but there's it's a scripture that's always stood out to me. And it's basically saying, Sarah did, and this is going to sound very like male dominated societies. Yes, at that time, but the verbiage is basically saying Sarah
Hold on to
obeyed
your
her.
hats, hater beans.
Hold on to your hats. So it's basically saying like Sarah obeyed her husband and called him Lord, not saying he is God or like Lord over her. But this, and then the verse continues on and it says she became a daughter of,
It's a lowercase l.
yeah, and she became a daughter of Abraham and like trusted. In essence, the verse is talking about like because she obeyed what her husband had said, she didn't have to worry because she knew God was going to take care of her. So I think sometimes, and like that's going back to the very beginning of time, where I think culturally that's been trying to be twisted, where we have women walking in things that men are gifted for because they've had to.
Yeah.
And like that's where the grace of God covers, where it's like, I'm thinking of like, oh my gosh, even like single mothers, like they're having to do both roles, male and female.
Right.
And is that hard?
You know, it's funny you say that.
But I think there's a grace because I don't know.
No, I get what you're saying.
You get what I'm trying.
What's the guy's name? Oh, he's so annoying, and he never has a shirt on, and he's always smoking a cigar in his podcast. Tate.
Andrew Tate.
Andrew Tate.
Oh, I don't know.
I actually saw a reel the other day where he was basically like, you know, women think that women have like been going off to college, getting jobs and everything like that because they think that they have to. And he's like, and that is the man's fault. He's like, we've totally made them feel so insecure that we like, he was basically just saying like, we've made women feel so insecure that they feel like they don't have security and safety or a reliance that they can have on men because men have gotten so emasculated basically over the years.
You know, in a way though, you're almost called out for masculinity. You can't be aggressive. You can't be protective.
I think it's like
you try to open a door for someone anymore and like they'll
sense.
just take the door from you. Like I can hold the door myself.
I can do it myself.
Right?
Yeah.
You know, it's an interesting time out there.
Yeah. I found this verse. It's 1 Peter 3:6.
Okay.
And this is just the NIV version. It's the first one that popped up. Actually, I'm going to do NLT. And it says, for instance, Sarah obeyed her husband Abraham and called him her master. You are her daughters when you do what is right without fear of what your husbands might do. So even in this aspect of like giving men that place, and I think like we were reading, has that been taken away within the church? And not saying that women can't do those things, but I think it's been like an emasculation of men and then an over-masculation of women. And
well, yeah, I mean, to dig deeper into that, I think, you know, that's, you know, I'm a youth pastor at our church as well. And one of the things we really push to our youth is to know your identity.
Yeah.
Through Christ, not through labels or through friends.
Right.
Because you can see, it's so sad to see even at that young age, you'll have, you know, maybe a little girl who likes baggy jeans and a hat. And so they'll come in one Sunday and be like, oh, well, you know, I think I like girls now. Like, why? Because that's how I dress. And so everyone just said it. And so, you know, like they'll take a label.
My heart
to
goes
fit
out to
in.
all the former tomboys like myself.
versus, I know, right.
Like
versus being like, that's a tomboy. Like
100%.
you grow up. Yeah.
100%. And I think you extrapolate that out, and it's been, you know, ever since our generation, you know, I can't speak before, but being 38, you weren't allowed to have men at different levels of the emotional spectrum, right? Like it's okay to have a sensitive guy who's creative and can do floral arrangements.
You were just as
likes
much a
to
man.
garden.
Yeah.
Like that's still a man.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
society would label him effeminate and try to force a label onto him, which immediately emasculates him.
Right.
Yeah.
And as a man, if you feel emasculated, now you have something to prove.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then now you're not yourself because you're trying to prove something, and you're all fighting this little emasculated guy inside because you just didn't know your identity. You weren't comfortable in who Christ made you to be.
Right.
So you either accept the label from the world or you fight the label from the world when God wants us to just rest.
And then you want to
Just
belong
be.
so much. So the
100
label feels like it.
And so you see it. Yeah. And that that divide for people who have those similar type of personalities, it never goes away.
Right.
Like
Right.
a guy who's into things that would be considered less manly is going to have to answer for those all the way through life. Like it takes me back. There's Avery Johnson. I don't know. I know you like basketball. Played with the Spurs, with the Twin Towers back in the day. He coached Alabama's basketball team for a few years.
Yes.
But they were, oh gosh, I don't remember who they were playing in the finals.
Don't worry if you're listening. I don't know who he is either.
Well, I got a point here. Somebody was trying to talk trash.
Yeah.
And they were like, Avery Johnson is nothing but a choir boy. Right. And so obviously, the derogatory where they're going with that. The insinuation is that choir and band and those type of people are less than men. Mm-hmm. They're less than. And so Avery Johnson, even back in the day, I feel like he answered it so great. He was like, oh, choir boy. He's like, was that an insult? He said, no, I associate choir with being in church, and I'm a church boy, so that doesn't hurt my feelings. And just deflected it perfectly. Yeah. But the insinuation and the intent there was, you don't meet this definition of man, so therefore you're not man enough.
Right. Well, and here's just another way to look at it for you 7 or however many % of men listeners we are at this point.
We see you, men.
If those types of things were only supposed to be feminine, then only women would have those talents, those abilities. Because if that's how God intended it, then no man would be able to sing. It would just be women are able to sing. Or it'd be like men would not be able to ever play an instrument ever because all the talent would be for women because it's more feminine or whatever.
Well, I just thought of that one of the first people that Scripture said the Holy Spirit came down upon was a male who got ordained to help build and customize the temple. Or like I can't remember his name.
Yeah, I can't remember his name.
But it starts with a B.
He's like the first craftsman, specifically
and
listed craftsman.
And it was talking about like how he would work with gems and jewels and pomegranate. I mean, like in gold and sewing and like, and it said, and it's the first situation where it said the Holy Spirit came upon him to help him prepare for these things. So, yeah, I think that, and I think just as much too that. It happens to women where, like how you were saying too, like a young girl likes to come in and
his name was like
jeans.
Bezalel.
What was it?
Bezalel.
Bezalel? That sounds right.
Bezalel.
Young Beezy.
Yeah. That was the guy that liked to work with his hands.
Yes, he did.
Sure did.
Well, and Jesus was a carpenter. I mean, like he built things and created those.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's just, I mean, hindsight, I'm not hindsight, but like deep dive, it's a tactic of the enemy, right? To get us away from our identity and to try to say we are something other outside of what God says and what God created and what God designed. And then the world is going, of course, to create acceptance in this because we deeply all long for acceptance.
Right.
And I think too, and this, like kind of thinking about how we are like, where men in church, I think there's this element of acceptance that's not in church for men being able to be this whole spectrum of people
100%.
that are there.
Yeah.
Like to
permeates the church too.
And to be fully yourselves and to come in with, hey, I struggle in all these areas and I know church, I'm supposed to be quote unquote a good person. And I'm, especially in our world now, we have things that people have never had to struggle with or it's been a long time or, I mean, stuff just runs rampant in our world right now. So most of the men in church are going to be struggling with things and and we'll get to something later too, but creating that safe space of like, you can be flawed and be in church.
When I think a lot of people confuse like passions and talents and skills with like a God ordained calling, right? Like a gender role. Like you may have a passion for sewing and enjoy it, but that's not like it's not your calling, right? Like God's calling you to more than that. They may be the means to get there, the medium, but like your role and your calling from God is specific to you, and which is specific to your gender and all of that.
It could just be a gift that you have been given by God to just bless somebody with.
And then I think if you look deeper into that, I can't speak for women, but I can for men. I think churches could do a better job at teaching God's definition of a man.
For sure.
And I feel like if men were to see and realize that, anyone who thinks Christianity is soft or it's weak or bro, you're just scared of it because the amount of accountability and trust, like you can view it that way, like trust, which to go back to your point, if that trust isn't helping your spouse feel safe, then like there's a massive fallout there.
Right.
And it revolves around the gender roles. Men want to be respected, women want to feel loved.
Right.
And it's twisted. So I think if churches did a better job of teaching, and that's what I love about our church, not to throw a plug in there, but
we do it all the time.
Teaching like specific roles like that like men are called to lead. That doesn't mean women cannot be leaders, but like in the big picture and the hierarchy of things, like you talk to a household, the scary part to me, and I don't know the answer, so I'll ask you guys, if the majority are women, but God is a generational family God, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, not just Abraham, and then not just Isaac second, and then like he is
like that continued down.
His blessings are generational blessings.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And I'm going to have to look into this. I don't know. So if the head of the household is refusing to submit and fall under and serve God, obviously there's grace there, and a praying mom can get the family and go.
Sure.
But you always hear you get the dad, you get the family, like to get the whole family there. And so it just had me thinking like about this topic and what we were talking about, like, you know, God, what happens in those households where the men refuse to submit, but the wife, the mom is so just heart postured towards you and praying and believing, and I mean, God's going to honor that. And I believe there's going to be blessings on the family and all that. But what's the generational aspect if the patriarchy is not active or participating?
Yeah.
Which I think that might be what we're seeing now.
I think so too.
A series of what we're seeing now.
A lack of fatherhood, lack of male leadership. And I think it starts with the church. And again, to go back to it, I think
and that's all been twisted. I mean, if you think about it, that has started a long time ago, because if you think about like 50s, 60s, you know, things that were going on in war times and things like that, women had to be running the household and things like that, filling those roles temporarily while their husbands were out. But then you've got all of these like very
my great granny was Rosie the Riveter. I got pictures of her back in during World War II of doing that. You know,
then you've got men that come home, they're broken, they're traumatized, they don't have the resources to heal from everything that they've experienced.
Well, especially at that time, that would have been.
And so therefore,
nor are they allowed to talk about it.
Right.
So therefore, there's this toxic, you know, kind of unspoken things like don't bother your father, like don't
like the rules in the house, don't speak unless spoken to.
Right.
You know not to tell dad till he's had his coffee, or like.
And then that sort of brings the rise to feminism and all of that, where it's like, actually,
I don't want to wait on you.
We don't need you because you're so like broken and not healing yourself from all of your past trauma. Like I can just leave and find something different and serve myself and whatever. And like Maria was saying, you know, I think our generation has started to see some of that, especially the generation that's coming up after us. There's been such an emasculation of men.
Not even that. There's been a destruction of the nuclear family. Like you have this whole generation coming up. I've never heard as many young people like tell me they don't want to be a parent. Like, that's like,
I've heard so many too. I don't want to be married. I don't want to be married. I don't want a family.
I'm like, man,
just hearing that.
The most fulfilling times and moments of my life have been through marriage and being a father. They've also been the most challenging and the hardest.
But I think that's also it too. Is like there's
being a man's not easy. Being a Christian man is not easy.
I think that also that's something too. Is like people don't want to face the challenge. They don't want the hard.
They don't want accountability. 100%. 100%.
Another thing that I was thinking about as you were asking that question of like, you know, where has that happened and how does this affect women and future generations? Well, it tells us in the Bible that a man's prayers are hindered when he is not treating his wife the way that he's supposed to. And so in that sense, it's like he's not treating his wife the way he's supposed to for whatever reason. That is causing a woman to think that she needs to step into that parental role of filling both mom and dad roles,
or find someone who will,
someone who will,
right? Or like even that's an active option now for a lot of people. It's screw doing the dad role too. I'm just going to find a dad. I'm going to find a better one.
And then you and I were
Yeah.
talking one time too about like how many times within this, like women step up to the plate so much we don't even give opportunities for men to step up.
That's also true.
So like just
That's
some
real.
of that, like in this way of like, okay, cool, I know I can do this, but like, how can yes, I can do it, but I know that this is going to fulfill the man that I'm with. So I'm going to not do it. So I provide an opportunity for him to be able to like step up and be a man.
Oh, that's good.
I
That's
know
real.
that
Like
I know
that.
that your wife is we've talked about this before, but
Mhm.
and Amanda's been on here, so you guys have all heard her too. Talks about
She was on
our episode
about
of
commitment.
what commitment looks like.
Man,
Yes.
dude, I've put her through the ringer.
Um,
Like,
but I think about
I love her.
I think about the stuff that she and I have talked about at times where it's like you get so used to, as you were kind of saying, Maria, like after our divorces, you and I have been single for a good amount of
Chunk of time.
And in that time, it's like we've had to step into those roles. So you get so used to that. And then when somebody comes along, you're like, please, I'll just take care of it myself because I already know what it needs to be done. And I'm just going to take care of it, whatever. And I have found myself, in relationship of, I've tried to be more intentional about catching myself when I'm doing those things, like giving a guy an opportunity to just lead in any sense, right?
Mhm.
Here was something, this is not original, but it came out of a reel. So in case you didn't see that reel or multiple reels to say the same thing, I'll just say it on this podcast episode. But it's basically like, hey, message to guys, Christian men especially, if your woman is saying, I don't care if we do this or that, she's giving you an opportunity to just make a decision and be a leader for a minute.
Just
own it,
Right.
make a decision, go and do
Take
it.
it.
She's going to love it. Because I do. I love it when that happens.
She might
Like,
even make a comment like she doesn't, but she does.
But she does.
Yeah.
Oh,
Like,
because she doesn't have to make the decision.
12,000%. When I see a man like make a decision and show confidence in that, it's like,
if I could just shut my brain off about
a
one
second.
thing for a second, that's awesome. Cool.
yeah, if
I
I
don't have
can
to think about
feel,
that.
if
Moving
I can
on
feel
to
like I don't have to think, perfect.
Moving
Okay.
on to the next
I will
200
say this.
Which takes it back to safety.
things.
Takes it back to
A,
safety
a
at the
woman,
core.
a woman will step up and lead in areas where she doesn't feel safe and protected in her
100%.
own home. And then speaking
So
from
good.
experience here, I mean,
Yeah.
the first, 8, 9, 10 years of our marriage, I admittedly barely led anything because I was terrified, and I figured she had it. Like you guys know Amanda, like she's got it.
Right.
Why would I step up and like potentially drop the ball or screw up or do something when like you've obviously got it?
Yeah.
And we finally had a knockdown drag out,
yeah.
and she's like, bro,
I don't want to do that.
bro, like to Meryl's point, she's like, my brain never stops.
Yeah.
Like if you could just,
I literally said 1,000 things, that makes no
Well,
sense.
and then I
Yeah.
think to
That's
the way
10,000.
right?
Because I'm just.
Well, and like that just got me thinking, Jacob, of how like, and there are scientific studies this way of how men's brains function and women's brains function. And there is a reason why if you can help a woman turn off her thoughts, night and day difference, because we don't have the ability to go to that like space where we don't think about
Yeah, we don't get to compartmentalize as well as
anything
men.
as well
do.
as men do. I mean, some
Yeah.
people
We
have
can
had
do it.
forced to, but
We can do it sometimes, yeah, and especially it takes trauma to
to-
teach us how to compartmentalize. But
I got really great at it for a
can
minute.
get there.
But I'm
And-
snapping out of
And then to the
that.
flip side, the men that you allow that opportunity to lead, there is no comment that can be more meaningful than after that. Even like just to acknowledge it, just to thank you. Like it's so hard sometimes as a guy, and I'll admit, like straight up, preface this, maybe we don't always deserve it, right? Like we're doing what needs to be done. I get that,
Right.
right? Like I'm taking out the trash because it's full. We didn't miss getting the trash out this week because I got it out there. Like I know that's all stuff that should be done, but man, those little thank yous in the moment just goes back to reinforce the fact that you're respected for what you're doing,
Mhm.
which then reinforces the fact that she feels safe and she feels loved. And so just never discount the opportunity to just like throw a rose out, to just say something. There's, from the men's side, it's very easy to to find yourself in almost like a mother-like relationship with your wife.
Oh,
like
it's
where
so
you feel like
easy.
you're
Yep.
screwing up so much, like you're living with your mom again.
And you're just seeking out her approval.
Right.
Could I just at least do this one thing?
And then
right?
you just slowly just shrink, and that's emasculating,
Yeah.
right?
Do you-
Like,
Oh, 100%.
Do you think some of that is why men are also not in church because of this fear of failure?
oh, 100%. It's
You know, in
it's
a way of, like,
accountability, failure, and submission.
I'm now going to this place that's telling me how to live my life a certain way
Yeah.
and challenging me in how I'm living my life a certain way. So if I fail, I now have to walk into this place knowing that I'm failing and
and everyone else is going to know.
and everyone else is going to know.
Or if they don't know, they assume.
Yeah. And
And
so
they're
it's
all
this
perfect. I'm
every-
the only one struggling here.
Exactly. And so I think there's some of that because we've created such I'm saying just the church as a whole has created some of that like perception of like you have to be so and so to go here or
Right.
be here. And so I think you could come in and like step in and feel like a failure. I mean,
Yeah.
as a woman, there's times I felt like that. So how much more for a man where that's genuinely part of how men are woven.
Well,
Yeah.
I mean, if you're needing respect to validate you, which
Yeah.
again, not most men are looking for that, right?
Right.
Whether it's the job, the house, whatever. Like even as a parent, like I find myself, I'm like, Selah, you will respond when I'm talking to you. Show me the respect. Like it
Right.
bothers me to no end. Like even with my daughter, and I know there's
Mm.
no malicious, there's nothing behind that, but I'm like, child, when someone is talking to you, speak, acknowledge,
Yeah.
say something. And it doesn't bother Amanda near as much.
Mm-hmm.
But to me, it just itches, like it just scratches that raw nerve of like, can I get some respect here? Like
Right.
Rodney Dangerfield can't get no respect. Like,
Yeah.
Like-
I've seen
Yeah.
that in my nephews where like they'll just go up to my sister and
Where's-
just demand something from her. And I'm like, "Excuse me, why are you talking to your mother like that? Where's your please?" And then he goes, "Oh, Mommy, may I please have?" I'm like, "Yeah."
Yeah.
So come on. Okay. Well, I have one more thing too that I don't want to gloss over what Jacob was saying really quick, but we do need to get to this other part.
Yeah.
yeah, we got a lot.
Um,
I'm
but
having fun. Let's just do it. We're
I
good.
know it's so good.
We were literally talking. We're like, we can't wait for this conversation, and it
But I
so
want-
needs to be had. too.
Yeah, what I wanted to say though was on Jacob's point about just the little what I would
Thank
say
yous.
are encouragements from women means everything. I was actually recently having a conversation with somebody and I didn't give this a lot of thought. Okay, I've been married before. I had premarital counseling then, and it was nothing short of a disaster experience in terms of didn't retain anything. My spouse wasn't my former future spouse was not interested
shouldn't
in
laugh.
what was going on.
The worst is when they only remember something to throw it back at you later. Like
Yes.
that's all you remember from counseling is this one moment that would
Yeah.
happen.
One thing.
Or it was nothing, but
And
like
you don't remember how to fix it after. Just like
Yeah.
this was.
but I've been through it a second time, and the way, like, one of the things that like really stuck with me was like the little it's just like men a lot of times are encouraged in premarital counseling. So if you're engaged or you're thinking about getting engaged, seriously do premarital counseling
Please.
because it is
Mhm.
so vital and it's so important. And there's so many things that, I mean, even as a believer, I didn't even think about.
the gender
talking
roles, like we were
over-
talking about earlier, like
Yeah.
just that's like men if they
Just
could
get
teach
it-
those roles
Yeah.
in that counseling before
And
you
like-
get to marriage counseling,
And our-
premarital.
yeah,
And
our
I'm like, you're not
pastor-
assuming anything of like, why aren't you okay? Now you're married. Why aren't you doing this? You shouldn't. It's like,
Well, and our pastor said to me, he was like, Maryl, like, I know how you are. I've known you for a real long time. But I want to let you know or remind you, like, that, you know, you may be picking someone that you view as a strong, like, masculine man and somebody that you know is going to provide for you and do all those things. He's checking off all the boxes exactly as Jacob's drawing the check marks
Check
in
mark.
there. But he goes, just, you need to, he's like, women have a hard time remembering that men, their egos are incredibly fragile. And it's like, and if you don't, it's just like what he says to men is in premarital counseling is you make deposits and then you can have really great withdrawals later. And it's not necessarily like a tit for tat, like you're looking to get something out
you
of
don't keep
every
score.
interaction. Yeah, exactly. But the goal is like I should be wanting to, without expectation, be putting deposits in so that I can watch my spouse develop, grow, and flourish as a person, as their own.
That should excite me
individual.
in and of that self.
Yeah, that should just bring you great joy to like put those deposits in, and as a result, you get great withdrawals, and however that looks is however that looks. But the same can be said with women. Is like men's egos are very fragile, and if you don't feed that, it starves, and whatever starves dies. And it's like, it's not saying that you have to be there and be the emotional support dog for your man. That's not what I'm saying at all.
Or say things that you don't mean. Like,
no, but it's like,
don't be fake. I think you can feel through that.
There's just nothing too small.
But it's what is something that I'm realizing and that I've been trying to be more intentional about is like thinking about how I'm wording things. Am I demanding something of my man, or how do I think it's better if it's like, I really need you to hang up some of this artwork for me. Can you just do that? Or if I were to go, I could really use a big, strong man to help me out with a project that I cannot do myself. Would you like to help me hang some artwork when you have time? You know, like just
night and day different.
It sounds so silly, but seriously, like the little things like that.
The look on Jacob's face right now.
Like, I gotta be your big strong man.
Yeah,
like, okay.
I'm in.
Yeah,
Like, and especially if I'm digging your chili, like we're like, I'm in. I'll hang your artwork up.
And that coming from somebody who is, I have always been especially with my former spouse, I was very much still the hyper independent. I continued that behavior where I didn't let him do things. I emasculated him.
Oh, I have to,
real bad. I mean, his mom did a number on him before, but I did not make things any better because I didn't trust him. I didn't feel safe around him. He never did anything to make me feel secure. Hate to say never, but I mean, I was in a weird situation with that. But like, I never fully felt safe. Well, why'd you marry him, Maryl? You know, I don't know. People do crazy stuff all the time, okay?
Well, we've talked about this one time before, and not my proudest moment, but I'm the first to admit it too. And I know some of the struggle comes from, and I'm not going to say my size, but it is like, okay, hear me out. So I remember like there are times in my previous marriage, my ex-husband would always say like, let me be the man. Cause we would be going someplace and I would like carry something. And in my head, I'm like, I'm just helping. But he was like, let me be the man. But I'm always just kind of that similar. Well, I've just had to do it before. And I know this sounds weird in a way, but it's like, even growing up or doing things because of my size and strength, I would have people come to me. Hey, can you help me with this?
Can you be my height?
Can you be my height? I need you. So for most of my life, it's more like, oh, I'm the one to do this. I'm helping you. And that's something like, I remember when he said that, I remember being like, you are the man, but I'm just helping carry. And he's like, let me do it.
Yeah.
How do you think it looks to everyone else?
How do you think it looks to everyone else? But
mine was more out of like survival mode. Like that's just what I was in for a really long time.
Well, then mine eventually turned to that way.
Yeah.
But it was just that it's that hard part of, or like you were saying too, the past how many years, it's like you do it all by yourself. So the first thought isn't, how can I ask for help? How can I let somebody do this?
Yeah.
Or even that, I think for women, that side of how do I provide an opportunity for him to step in and not be afraid of disappointment if he doesn't catch it.
Yeah.
And like, sometimes I think we don't because we don't want to be disappointed.
Yeah.
And especially when you've been through disappointment and hurts before, it's like, well, I don't want to feel that again. So I'm not going to give an opportunity to feel that versus giving that and then having it like
and to the woman nodding her head and agreeing to that very mindset, and then is like, yeah, that's me. Well, guess what? You're not a mind reader. You don't know how it's going to play out.
Right.
So why don't you just give it a whirl?
Yeah, we've got in sales, there's a term called mystical. Oh gosh, it's tongue twister, and I'm trying to say it. Mutual mystification.
Okay.
And it's when there are unspoken, unshared expectations from the beginning of the relationship. And this is work relationship, but any relationship.
Right.
When there are unmet, undeclared expectations from the beginning of the relationship that go unnoticed or unacknowledged.
Yeah.
it is almost 100% average. Like you are not going to, there will be hurt developed or distrust developed somewhere along that sales process. And in sales, losing trust, I mean,
It's
to anyone
huge.
who's in it, that's all you got, man. Like I'm in outside sales. I'm basically, yes, I work for a company, but I view myself like an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
Like I have the resources available. How can I use them to best serve my customers?
Yeah.
And so if they don't trust me to do that, if I'm the weak cog in their system and their supply chain,
Good luck.
you don't get that back. And fortunately, covenant of marriage, you should get the opportunity to get that back.
Right.
But
You
in
shouldn't
this
be
day and
going anywhere.
age,
Yeah.
there's a lot, like once that trust is gone, they're gone.
Yep.
What's the
Like
phrase?
there's people who aren't willing to rebuild trust.
Right.
It's like trust is gone, I'm out. I just can't trust you again.
I love the phrase of trust is lost in buckets but earned in drops. So it is, you are able to get it back. It's just going to take a long time and the consistent tiny efforts.
And
Which
in
is
a
where
business
I
relationship,
suck.
and in a business relationship, nobody's got time.
Nobody's
to build
got
that
time
back.
to do that.
Exactly. But in a relationship and in a marriage,
That's supposed to be
Yeah.
covenant and never ending.
and that's where
Yeah.
that's where I've struggled. And you guys talked about like allowing like stuff to get done, then getting out of the way to let the men do it. Me and my severe attention span of a gnat, and like Amanda did that so many years, and I missed it. Like we'd talk about stuff, and then like I'd either see her do it a week later, or it just wouldn't be done, and then finally, like
What was the flip?
it wasn't a nice conversation, but we finally had a conversation about
Yeah.
it, and she pointed out the fact that she was like, my trust with you is just shot. Like, what do you mean? Like, bills are paid, how, and she was like, yeah, but all about all the things that you just say, yeah, I'll take care of that. Yeah, I'll take care of that. Yeah, I'll take care of that. And she was like, what happens is you're not giving me enough of your attention to know what you're committing to.
Yeah.
And she was like, and the hardest part is the fact that you've broken promises to me you didn't even know you made because you weren't paying attention. And that hurts even worse because I didn't have your attention to begin with.
Oh.
Like,
Yeah.
Oh, that had to have been just a kick to the gut.
oh man, like broke. And then my first reaction is to get defensive and be like, I'm gonna tell you why I got like this, right? Like,
Right.
Yeah.
I mean,
your
like that's
fault
just
I don't pay attention. You talk too
Yeah.
much.
human nature though is
Yeah.
when
Oh,
we're in
for
those
sure.
moments is
For sure. And
defense
that's something we've truly are still, like, if I'm honest, like still working through that trust
Yeah.
level. Like I told you, I suck at that buckets thing or
Yeah.
like a minute ago. Like, I'm like, man, I had a good week. We
Right.
should be perfect like we used to be.
right.
Like,
But then also look at the ways
5
you've
years to
grown.
make up. For sure. No, it balances, but I mean, specifically looking at that trust
Yeah.
aspect, even with grace and forgiveness,
Yeah.
like she's human.
Right.
Right.
So she can grace and forgive all she wants till the next time I do it again. And then it's like all that grace and forgiving you had done, just dig.
undid
We're just going
it.
to start digging it all back up.
Yeah.
And so for
Sheesh.
the challenge in that,
Yeah.
and that's, I think the beauty of a marriage with two willing participants to do that is you have the opportunity to do that. And then
Well,
by
that and you guys have created a space for each other for her to bring that up to you when that does happen.
oh,
Yeah.
100%. Yeah.
is great.
And that's
for
what
sure.
people feel safe in the way of like,
She calls me out.
yeah. And
I
she
need
feels
it.
safe that she can.
Yeah.
And I think that's
Definitely.
you, like as a woman, if you don't feel like you can bring your issues,
Yeah.
then you don't feel back to
Yeah.
that whole cycle.
No,
thing.
it was bad. I mean, we had the challenge, the point where it's either like, this is bad enough. Are you going to work to fix it, or should we just stop here?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I
You know
love
what I
where we're
mean?
going,
Like-
but we really need to get
I
back
know.
on
I was
topic.
just thinking, okay. So I was looking at them. So Murrow, the guy who we were reading about when we first started.
David Murrow,
David Murrow.
yes.
So there's 12 things that men fear the most about church. And this
I
was,
believe that's within the book that was
that he was reading.
referenced
Perfect.
earlier. That's why men hate going to church.
Let's
But
go
there was a
through 'em.
section that
within that.
yeah, this guy named Jeff. Okay, all I could find was his first name was Jeff and not Jeff. It's Geoff.
Oh, he's one of those.
He's one of those.
Yeah, he writes the Christian Valor blog, but he writes a lot about. I was digging around in there. He writes a lot about apologetics, and then he had extracted this section from the book. So, Maria,
Yeah.
if you want to take
So
it away,
there are 12 things that are here. So we kind of want to read the 12 and just get your initial
like your thoughts.
initial
Let's go.
thoughts on
like
it.
rapid fire. We're just going to go through
Yeah.
it.
yeah.
Okay. So 12 things men fear the most about church. 1, I'll lose control. Men have to face their fear of being out of control because of the call to give that to God, to give control over to God.
Yes, because if I'm in control of situation, I can make sure I look my best at all times, and you won't see my faults, my weaknesses. You won't see what I struggle with because I'm in control of this, and I'm only going to show you what I want you to see.
It's good.
And you lose that when you go into church.
Yep.
Even when you don't want to, that first moment of crying during a worship song or something, and you're like, I'm losing it. Like, nope, don't like this feeling.
Pull it back.
Some people love that feeling and like, oh my God, I haven't felt that emotion in forever. And there's a lot of people who are like, nope, I was taught I'm not supposed to feel that.
Yeah.
Like, so it's, that's hard.
Well, on to that. Number 2, if I become a Christian, I'll go soft. Many men think that they are required to become nicer, stop having fun, or doing things that they wouldn't normally do that don't bring out their masculinity.
I think that goes back to the church.
I should say they're perceived.
Yeah. No, I think that goes back to the church and the teaching of, those gender roles and what they are God ordained, not laws of men, but what God has called the difference in those gender roles to be. And I can't remember the exact quote, but Jordan Peterson, he had a perfect one. How do you say it? He was talking about masculinity and he said, no. He said, being a real man is having the ability to defend and protect, but the emotional control to know when to use it.
Wasn't he talking about rage too? He's like, you should feel rage.
Oh yeah.
But how do you?
It's a good thing. Yeah,
it's a good thing
it's a
to
good
feel
thing.
rage.
How do you control it?
How do you control it?
Yeah. And so I always love that aspect of masculinity. It's not that I can't, it's that I won't.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of people view Jesus as the I can't.
Yeah.
And then he's really like, just don't try me.
Yeah.
Like, don't test the Lord your God. Like, so I think if we got to see, if they saw the Jesus you read about in Revelation on the horse with the sword and like,
he's not
the ability to
kind.
visualize, but he's that now.
Right.
Yeah.
He's
He
that
is
now.
that now.
Like, you just can't mistake his patience for tolerance. Like,
Right.
he's gearing
That's
up.
true.
Like, the blade is getting sharpened. Like, he is ever much still that God.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Okay, this one's kind of funny. And it's kind of a joke, but apparently this can be an issue.
I could see it being an issue.
Yeah. Okay.
Go on.
For the single, very attractive guys, church is tough.
She's like, I'm just going to add my own adjectives in here.
Yeah. Because we don't want to say just single guys in general, because there are single guys in general that don't get any attention from women. And but I'll say the particularly random unicorn guy that's very attractive and is also on fire for God. I feel like there is an unending amount of Christian podcasts of single women where we're like,
where you at though?
Where are you at?
We've got some average Joes, but where are the George Clooney's coming in? I don't even know why I said George Clooney. He's not even my favorite. But anyway, he looks good in a suit.
He does look nice in a suit.
No, I'll share.
But anyway, it's like example being the one attractive guy that gets flogged by like 16 single women at church.
Yeah, I don't know about all that, but I'll share a fun church story from our launch. We had and I won't share names, but I'm proud of you, bud, how this ends up. I love it and the end of it. But we had a guy who was coming to our church, and early on in our church, that's funny we're talking about this. It was kind of almost flipped. We had a lot more guys and not very many girls initially. Like it was kind of even, but not tilted the other way.
But it was all were married.
Exactly. I was going to say almost all the women there were married.
Yeah.
And so we had a guy come up and, we had noticed he hadn't been there in a couple of weeks. We've been coming for a few months. Really great guy. So we were like, hey, bud, let's chat. Everything okay? What's been going on? He was like, man, he's like, I'll just have to be honest with you guys. Like, he's like, I started coming to church and joined the church to get married, and you guys don't have any single women here, and so I don't see any opportunity for that. And he said, that's just where my heart is. So I'm joining this church over here, and I'm gonna see how it goes. And that cat was married within a year.
Mm-hmm.
Still married.
Still married.
That's what I mean. Like, props, the honesty to own it. But funny church story to that same point. He came specifically
for that
to find that wife, and he found it.
And that tells you, because that cat got married in
that
here.
Quick, right? No, for sure. That feeds what you're saying.
I know who that is, but I can't recall. Maybe I do.
Chat off air.
What?
We'll chat off air.
Okay, yeah. But
you were going there at the time. You should know.
Okay, I think that says a lot about his heart position, though. Like, his heart was clearly positioned to find a woman of God.
That's why I said I love it.
It wasn't like, I'm just here to find a woman and say I'm here to find a wife just to kind of gloss
it wasn't
over
a move,
a little bit.
Right? It wasn't a move. Like, you can get a good girl out of church. Like, no, he wanted an on fire
Right. Like I'm looking for a wife, and
because
he
there
is
are
looking
guys
not.
that go to church and that's their sole purpose, and they stay single because their heart isn't positioned right.
ugly on the
Because
inside.
they're just looking to
Yeah.
nab one.
Find the next one.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I thought you were a man
And then
of
go to the
God.
next church when it inevitably does not work out.
Yeah, because it won't.
Because you have nothing to offer.
Yeah, but no, I love it, man. Props to that guy, and man, I love his heart behind it and the honesty.
Mm-hmm. No,
Like,
Okay, here's another one. I'm jealous. So for a lot of men, church is their competition. It takes their wife's time, attention, love, energy away from him. Why would he want to encourage it or give support and approval? Oh,
Because obviously you're not doing enough.
At home.
I mean,
Yeah.
sorry, like that's where my mind goes.
Sorry about
like,
it. Not sorry.
If you're jealous that's like it's not just her time, that'd be one thing, right? Like I spend a lot of time at church. If you're jealous that it's time, attention, love, and energy, then you're not giving her your time, attention, love, and energy, or you're not speaking her love language in a way where she feels like she's being fed that. There's no replacement for the word, but the emotion and jealousy towards the church stems from a place of hurt.
Right.
That
I
again, to go back
remember-
as a man, you're in control, bro.
Right.
Like control it. Love your wife.
I had to talk to Pastor Troy after my divorce because I was like, I was so mad at the church for so long because I felt like my ex-husband gave everything to our church plant and nothing to me. That everything was always.
But it wasn't the church; it was the addiction.
It was the
time.
And it was So I was just like, I was so mad for so long.
I could see that. That'd be hard.
He idolized that.
Yeah, and that like identity comes from what we were doing, and I'm just like, when do I get that?
Right.
When do I get the staying late? When do I get the getting up early? When do I get the
extra?
extra
Extra effort.
Yeah. And so I remember I just like that was something I had to apologize for because I was like, I hated like where I just was like, I don't want anything to.
Yeah.
Not that I don't want anything to do, but I was just like, yeah. So I was just that was something like where I see that, and it's just like, yeah, I get that 100%.
But props to you to have an uncomfortable, hard conversation rather than just letting church hurt fester.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
Yeah, that's true.
Oh, wait, we forgot about skipped one.
We skipped number 4. All right, so this other one. Okay, this one says Christians don't get laid. Not even biggest concern because of the motivation behind the book is to get men who consider themselves to be Christians back in church. But that's one.
But still, that's another driver.
Yeah.
True.
Christians don't get laid, so why would I go to church? Because that encourages celibacy.
That's a whole other long
or
podcast.
abstinence, depending
That's
on whether
a whole
you've had.
other one. Man,
We should bring Jacob back to talk about that.
Golly.
I'll step on toes, man. I wasn't perfect. I'm not going to sit here and say I was a virgin when I got married. I partied. Like I made mistakes. And I'll sit here and I'll be honest and admit that a lot of those mistakes carried into the first few years of our marriage.
Mm-hmm.
Like with again, unmet expectations or distrust or hey, maybe your wife does it different than your previous ex-girlfriend and maybe you like that better, but now you're committed to her for life.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's an issue, but do you know what it wouldn't be an issue?
Yeah. If you didn't have those preferences in the
if you
first
didn't
place.
have preferences because you saved yourself for your wife. So
I listened, there's a podcast and they were talking about how our culture
not
right
the
now,
fun answer. I'll tell
No,
everyone
it's
that. I'll
good.
admit
It's
it. It
good.
is not the fun answer by any means. Like it's not.
What I was listening to, they said we are trying to create Optimus Primes for our own desires when no one's ever met that. So you're trying to take a piece of partner 1 over here of what they did. You're trying to take a piece of partner 2 and what they did. And then when you finally settle down and you commit, you're wanting your favorites from all your experiences, and no person is ever going to match.
And you're stuck
that.
with one.
And
you're
you
stuck
know,
with
when
one.
you say that,
It sounds gross saying it, but like that's what they're saying. Like
that's actually really creepy. It's
Oh,
a really
100%.
creepy thing that we do, and I don't think that we as human beings like acknowledge
Go
that.
back to
That's what
Frankenstein. We've been building our own best version of ourselves forever. I think
Right.
that's the demonic fall in the side
Yeah.
to try to complete Christ's creation and try to improve it. We'll get on that one on your podcast, Byron. That's more for that. But yeah, no,
I have to draw a line here. It's not Optimus Prime. You're talking about Voltron.
Voltron.
I'm sorry.
Well,
I was
just
waiting.
thank you,
Not
but you know what
sorry.
I mean.
Don't be sorry, Byron, for ever cutting in because we love
when you do. We told you that last time. Chime in whenever.
No.
Try to tell them.
Soul ties are real, and I
Yes.
don't care who you are. You're going to have to fight those thoughts, and you're going to have to spend time in prayer, and you're going to have real conversations with God about like healing a lot of those sexual wounds. And it might not even be stuff you consider a wound, but it's a wound because you sinned against God. And if it's a wound, it's damaging.
Yeah.
And so you have to heal it. And the only way to heal it is through hard conversations and with God or with your spouse. But it's just going to lead to more discomfort later on. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I'll share, if I can, I'll share another honest story about my marriage.
Well,
do you want to?
Yeah. Jacob, the mic's yours.
Sorry.
I wish you could have seen Maria's face when she said that, you guys.
Sorry, Amanda. I won't share her name anymore just in case. So you don't know who it is. But Amanda. No, we did not save and wed ourselves for marriage. But I had a massive, when I knew she was the one and I wanted to get married to her, I had a massive conviction in my heart. And Amanda and I were going to church, but I've been honest with everyone up here. We weren't living it, really trying to do it. We just kind of wanted the fruit without the work, until we got up here. So praise God, he never gave up on us. Praise God for that. But and so I made a decision in my head, well, this isn't right. And I'm feeling convicted. And I don't know where Amanda is in her walk with God because she just started coming with me. So I'm just going to be the man and lead this. And we're just not going to have sex anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Good for you, dude.
Except I didn't tell her. And so it led to me turning her down a couple of times and her thinking something's wrong or what's going on. You've never turned me down. You've never said no. I've always been irresistible to you. And she still is. Oh my God. She's gorgeous.
She's
gorgeous.
a looker. She's stunning.
It hurt her
in
in ways that I had no idea. And I'm like, but God, I'm trying to do it your way. And he's like, yeah, but you've already done this. What you've done needs to be redeemed back to me to be healed.
Yeah.
You don't get to make that decision on your own, whether you're following scripture or not. You can't follow scripture without God and expect him to be there.
Yeah.
So it's something we've had to heal and deal with. And we're 14 years in, and there's times where it still comes up what could we have done different, or what should we, or babe, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I took that from you, and I thought we both won at the time. But I hurt you and I hurt us. And I heard us 15 years down the road, which was not even in my mind in the moment of I'm getting laid. Right? I'm not thinking about damage 15 years later.
Right.
Yeah.
But it's something we had to deal with, and it was real, and it's tangible. So you can't say that doesn't affect your marriage or your life. And if it does, then you have issues you have yet to acknowledge that are probably bigger than you think they are.
Right. That's true.
Yeah. I have a comment because I was ready to throw my hand up.
Go on.
Before we move on. So this talks about 12 things men fear, but we're only covering 6 of them because
we're just having fun.
We knew we'd just be chatting about this anyway. But before we move on to the last one, what I wanted to say, to the point of Christians don't get laid, if you're a guy and you're hearing this, hear me when I say that if you have an issue with if going to church, if the fact that you have to consider and then submit to celibacy in order to be a follower of Christ, I would only say to you, and that's that sounds awful. That sounds not fun, whatever. Especially if I know that I've met the woman that I'm going to marry. What does it matter anyway if we're going to get married?
Then go get a daggum license real quick.
Yeah.
You can get them quick.
Yeah. Paul even says that, first of all. But second of all, I would challenge any guy who has that line of thinking and say, okay, well, maybe you need to have a look at how much self-control you have. Because if you seriously cannot do that, a guy deciding that he is going to honor, say, because usually it's the woman that's we need to be celibate, whatever.
Typically it is.
And if she says that and you don't honor it.
Yeah.
But I mean, I heard this somewhere that it was there's a difference between honoring that and then taking leadership in it, and then just what was the term that I heard that was allowing it, or oh, okay, I'm just waiting. We're waiting because that's what she wants.
But your heart ain't in it.
It's I mean, I would just challenge you to seriously consider. Are you seriously you're so attached to not being worried about being in control of your own body, that you're willing to throw away like a chance at eternity. Like that's really what you're talking about. If you really want to get all like deep about it, because it's like, oh, I don't want to go to church. Well, you're going to refuse God and a life of eternity in heaven with him, not separated, because the call is to be celibate until you're married. That is wild.
It's not like there's a timestamp on courting either, right? Like my parents dated for 3 months. Amanda and I dated, well, we'd been together a lot longer, but our court like 6 months.
Yeah.
Like it's not like, 6 years of just like I'm committing myself to this now.
Well,
like,
and one of my favorite things I heard a pastor say, and this just hit me, and he was talking about, he's like, the call to celibacy isn't just because, oh, I'm not having sex until I'm married. But he was like, it is practice for what happens if worse happens in your vows. He said, it's not a matter of, okay, we say for better, for worse, but we don't really mean it. What happens if your spouse has a stroke and they're no longer able to fulfill you that way? Can you practice self-control and not go sleep with other people
and still love?
When that's what you promised, and now you don't know how to practice. And I just was like, oh,
dang,
and he's like,
that's real.
He was like, there's a reason why it's in there. He's like, it's practice. It's not because God's trying to keep something from you.
Right.
It's training. It's training for, and of course he goes, God forbid, no, we never want the worst to happen. Right. Nobody does. But if you're taking your vows seriously, celibacy is an opportunity to practice that, because you might not get to have that fulfillment. And can you still love after the fact? I think it was I also heard a pastor talk about too, like if you've had, and this is for like men and women, and not saying you won't mess up, but even within that too, so many times, like, or you were saying, Jacob, where you were just like, nope, we're not having anymore. There's this period of like, what the one pastor I was listening to say, he's like, I had to like have a sex detox. He's like, because of how many people that I had slept with prior to my wife, I had to have time.
There's a lot
where
in
I
that
didn't,
as well. Yep.
So that it wasn't just immediate.
Yeah.
Like, and so he's like, that's also the importance of that celibacy. So if I have lived that kind of life, I'm able to like,
you gotta pray all that stuff out.
You gotta like,
it
gives you that time. So I just was like, it's so real.
It's like being an addict. Like you
gotta let God heal that.
You have to give time to thaw out. That's what I always referred to sobering up as, thawing out, because you're allowing yourself to feel emotions, pain, life,
anxiousness,
everything that you've literally been blocking with drugs or sex or whatever it might be for so many years.
Food, I'm going to throw that out there because so many times Christians, we are so good at pointing fingers, but
unless
we do
it's gluttony.
Right. Unless it's gluttony, then that's not like,
no, that's
the same
good.
thing.
That's really good, y'all. That's so true.
Okay.
Last one. Drum roll, please.
No.
Oh, all right. So number 6 reason why Jacob and I were like, yeah. All right.
I'm always down for a drum roll.
We love them. All right. So I'll be held to an impossible standard. Married Christian men are expected to be super husbands. Modern Christianity has taken the worst aspects of feminism and molded/repackaged it into a traditional Christian package. Men are expected to be the perfect slice of everything that is good about tough men and everything that is good about sensitive men, and none of the bad. You can't drink. You can't make all the money. You can't be a crybaby.
You have to make all the money.
Oh, yeah, you have to make all the money. You can't be a crybaby, but you must be sensitive to the needs of your wife. You can't be a child, yet you have to be the perfect father. You must be an equal part handyman, bricklayer, leader, confidant, father, loving caregiver, spiritual head, and you must work hard every day, but not be a workaholic. I'm exhausted just reading that.
Yeah.
That guy's got a really twisted view, but I mean, not that far off in a weird way.
Sounds like an anxious mind.
Why would you not want to be a part of something that made you the best version of yourself?
Oof.
What are you scared of?
That's a good question.
Yeah.
What's holding you back from wanting to be the best version of yourself? And if you don't think the best version of yourself is to be the best husband, the best father, the best employee, then you're ignorant. And you're lying to yourself.
Yeah.
Like I see the challenge in that. And that's where we go back to, Christianity is not soft.
No.
No aspect of being a Christian man is soft. This is not easy to do.
Right.
But you're right. If you want to whine it and lay it out like that kind of perspective and woe is me, yeah, man, it's hard. It's hard. But there's grace through. There's people. There's community.
Yeah. I think the line too, where it says you have to be perfect. I think that's the lie too, where it's like, no, but.
Yeah, and women seem to think that we have to do that too.
Right. When we were reading this, I was like, I'm exhausted reading it. And then like in my head, it's like, but I do that. Yeah. Even from the woman aspect of like, I have to be strong, but I can't be too emotional. Like, but I need to be able to process my emotions, but not show it. And then I need to be able to be independent and not need a man because I don't want to like have this idol of who a man could be in my life, but yet still have this like, this desire to have him. I mean, like just trying to balance.
But if we were already that person, then there's no need for the sanctification process.
Right. And I think that's the thing too, is like,
so that's like the challenge, right? Like, yes, that's exhausting, but you don't look at it like an exhaustive list. It's a relationship. Right. So you go day by day, step by step, and then you're able to look back and be like, man, I'm checking some of those. I've been there for my wife. Right. I feel like I've been really good with my daughter lately. Like I've been patient with 2 emotional women in the home. Like, you know, it's all perspective and heart posture is kind of what it comes down to on that end. So, I mean, if you frame it like that, it'd be hard to sell anybody to get to church as a man.
Right.
But I think if you unpacked layer by layer and looked at the role of the Holy Spirit in our lives and then go all the way back to step 1 and you're willing to submit to that authority.
Well, and I think when you just mentioned like the Holy Spirit in our lives, like just as encouragement to the men who are listening and women of this process of sanctification, like God is not going to be like, here's everything wrong with you, fix it. It is literally a process and a journey, and he does it the way that you need to. Like,
well, if he did that, then we wouldn't follow him because it would be too traumatizing.
It'd be too traumatizing. It'd be too much.
That is how loving of a God that we serve is he reveals those things to us little by little.
And then it's always in ways that we get it. It's never like, what's God doing? It's like, he's a good father, and he's going to parent me different than he parents Jacob, 100%. Different than he parents Maryl, just like our parents did with our siblings. Like, I know my parents my mom was like, Maria, we could look at you wrong and you change. Adam, little different, but raised us the same way. But just, I mean, we're different people. And so God's going to meet us right where we are.
Get a spanking and be like, is that all you got, Dad?
Right. And I would be like, please don't spank me. Don't spank me.
I remember to call my dad, I can't spank you anymore. It doesn't hurt. It's not doing its thing. You're challenging me. I'm like, all right.
You're like, that's right.
Yeah.
Then started grounding. I'm like, I hate this. Spank me. Spank me and get it over with.
Yeah.
Oh gosh.
No, that was so good. Man, that's good. That's good. Here, I'll just real quick, one last quote that I thought was pretty, this is it's not from a pastor or anything, but it's Andrew Yang, former Democratic nominee for president a while back, but
okay.
But just a quote. Yeah, I'm not
No,
promoting
I remember
him
hearing about
anymore.
his politics.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know anything about him.
But this quote kind of slapped for what it is. Male failure begets male failure to society's detriment. Our media, institutions, and public leadership have failed to address this crisis, framing boys and men as the problems themselves rather than people requiring help.
That's huge.
And I thought 100%. that was a pretty good summary of the conversation. Because it's a chicken and egg thing now. It's if you've said men are weak if they get help, then you've created a situation where they can't get help, but we're also the problem. Mm. And we're expected to dig ourselves up out of the hole and carry everyone else along with us.
Yep.
Without help and with everyone watching.
Yeah.
So
come look at the guy in the hole.
Right.
Like everyone flocks to that, right? Like, and that's the fear as a man. Everybody sees me at my worst. I'm stuck. I'm trapped.
Right.
Let me fight for control.
Yep. So, and to kind of wrap this up and look at going forward. So off of that quote, since we know the church is primarily dominated by women, and we know that this is the Bold Women podcast, so lots of ladies listening to this, is there something that women can do to like help turn this around, to help encourage men to be in church? And I know a lot of that's going to come from like the Holy Spirit and the conviction side, but what as women can we do?
I have advice, but
what as women can we do to aid in encouraging men that is something vital?
One, be inviters, bring men to church, get them plugged in to other men in the church, not just show up and sit and hang out with you, but like go in intentional. Like, man, I think you'd really get along with this guy. If I want you to come back again with me, it'd really help to have a friend on the inside in here, right? Like if you really want your men to come to church with you or a guy, do that next step and help get him plugged in all the way. Because if he's not going on
With
his
other
own,
men.
yeah, right. Like if he's not
Mhm.
going on his own, he's only going to go with you. Then he'll be dependent on you. Are you wanting someone to grow as a dependent on you, like to sit with you in church, or like are you wanting to really
Mhm.
help grow his walk with Christ?
Yeah.
And so I think that's the difference in perspective, and probably depends on what your commitment level is, right? Like how much are you going to invest in this guy with that? But I think being genuine and open about that, and then plugging him into other Christian men is
Yeah.
a big part of that. Is a big part of that. That's why we had our softball group forever. You
Yeah.
know, that was
Oh my gosh, how many relationships off that softball group are people still in our church?
it's huge. And we had so many people like, well, I'll send my boyfriend to play or somebody else. And that was the plug to get them.
Yeah.
And then we'd end up getting them at church because it's about getting them in the right people, the right
Yeah.
environment.
People they can connect with.
Exactly.
That's interesting because my response was like, women, get out of the way. Just stop trying to take care of everything.
Oh, well, that's
Like,
huge.
stop
That can
trying to freaking manage everything all the time.
Yeah.
I
allow men to be men.
Allow that giving that
I
space.
respect and I love what you said, but I think of what you said in the context of if you're dating someone or if you're engaged
Oh,
or
totally.
newly
Yeah.
married,
That's why I said
that
level
is
of commitment.
yes.
Yeah.
What I just said is speaking to the single women. Don't just be, it's not your job to manage a man and how he fits in church. You can invite guys, of course. You can invite more men to come to church and things like that. But honestly, it's going to be better if you just don't try and like manage it all the time. Because I think women do that. We do that all the time. We do it way too often.
Now
Try
you
to
make
think like, oh, I don't see something happening, so I'm going
I'm
to
gonna
try
do
and
it
make it
myself.
happening.
now
and
you
I'm
make
going
me
to take
wonder
care
how
of it.
much stuff in my life is like being controlled that I'm unaware of because there's a woman behind it controlling it because there's a man who's not doing enough. And I'm like,
Well, we're really good at. Well,
Well,
we've.
she's your neck. So
Well, how many times have you and I had conversations of like, I realize like it's ultimately control, and control at the root is manipulation. Like
yeah.
I'm trying to take control because I'm trying to manipulate the situation for how I want
100%.
it, what I want people to perceive it as. Like where
Yeah.
we really don't have that. Like I cannot control any of the things or manipulate situations.
was it about
Yeah.
you or him at church at that point then?
Exactly.
Right. Well,
Right,
what's
like,
the point? Well, and then I think even the other part is like, don't downplay prayer.
Right.
And I think
It's
so many times we are just like, all I can do is pray. Perfect. You are in the best spot.
Yeah.
Where how much sweeter to know that like God changed a person's heart versus like you doing that. And like if the opportunities present itself, of course, bring and ask, but like don't like me to you as women, don't downplay your prayers, and especially if you're married, don't downplay your prayers over your husband. If you're dating, don't downplay your prayers over that.
And if
even,
you're single, you should be praying for your man
Future
already.
man.
Yeah. like the Lord knows who it is.
Be praying for your man. Be praying for the opportunities for him to encounter other godly men and godly community, and that they gravitate towards where you are.
Mm-hmm.
That's all you need to do, really. That is really your role. But I think also in the dating context, it's quite simple. You don't ask your man to go to church. You tell him that is a condition of dating me.
100%.
That is a condition of access to me.
Non-negotiable.
Yep.
You want to hang out with me. You want to spend time with me. You want to get to know me. My expectation is that your butt is in church, and not that we're just sitting there, because we're also going to eventually at some point have Bible studies. We're going to be having conversations about this. So you have to think long and hard about what you want for yourself, because that's what this is about. It's about whether you actually want a relationship with Christ. And if you do, then to meet the standard of having time with me is going to church.
And if you don't, this isn't going to work.
Because let me tell you, ladies,
Yep.
there's no absolute way that God can do anything, of course, but it just makes things a lot harder if you are dragging your man kicking and screaming to church. And a lot of times I think that can tend to open us up and your man up for church hurt, because he has different or immature expectations of what his church experience should be.
Especially if there's been church hurt in the past, it's like going to be
and it's exactly like what we say a lot of the times, just to remind yourself that you are not in charge of outcomes, because we serve a God of outcomes. He's the one who saves, not you.
yeah. You cannot save.
You cannot
no
save
matter
your
how
man.
much
You
want
cannot
to.
save your man by dragging his butt into church. Although that has happened before, but it's a matter of setting standards. And it's like,
this is what I'm.
maybe if you really think that this is the guy for you, and he is not currently going to church. I don't know why I'm going on this little tangent, but I'm
Preach.
speaking to
Tangent.
somebody.
Hand John.
But if you think that if you think that something is going to work out with this guy, and you really want him to go to church, of course you should be praying for him. But like, man, I would just say, you know, that's it. Maybe that means that you have to not spend as much time around him, because this is what happened. This is something that happened to me in my previous marriage. I'll give you some wisdom from that. I started going to church after my ex and I had been together for 8 years. And the entire time that we were together, I was not following Christ. And it was real freaking hard. And I never got him to go to church with me because I all of a sudden changed the expectation. And by that point, I was already married to the guy.
Yeah.
And so it was like, you can't start something. And so if you're in a dating scenario, you're in a very good position to backtrack and go, okay, you know what? I understand that I haven't done things, but this is something that's important to me. And I need to understand, and I need you to understand that this is an expectation that I have for our relationship going forward. And if you don't like that, then we're going to have to spend less time together.
You work in a law firm, right?
Yes.
Established precedent.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And if this is something, gosh, I've even had this conversation too. Like, if this is not something you want, let me know. Because this is not like, that's what.
This is what I require.
This is what I, like, this is.
And
like,
I know that wasn't me before, but here it is.
And I was
So
like,
that's that.
And if you really love me, you want this best version of me.
Right.
Right.
And I
think
want,
that's a
just like
huge-
I want the best version of you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
and this is like a huge, it's not just like, it affects so many other aspects.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Beautiful.
put that in your pipe and smoke it.
Or don't. Maybe journal it in a book.
What a
Can
good
you vape it?
conversation.
That was great.
Can you vape it these days? I feel like you can vape everything.
Probably. Well, thank you, Jacob.
Thank you,
for
Jacob.
joining
Thank
us.
you,
Jacob
ladies.
Russell.
And
Lord
Byron.
And Byron.
Thank you, everyone else,
Yes.
for joining us today. This was a longer episode, but we really appreciate you
Yeah.
sticking around. And let us know what you think of the conversation. You know, slide into our DMs. I don't even think people say that anymore. Sorry, that was
Any
aged me.
complaints on anything I said, take it to Maria and Maryl.
Tag Jacob.
Yeah.
Just kidding.
All right, everyone.
We love y'all.
Be safe.
Bye.
Bye.
Peace.